A resounding re-election for the mayor and tight races won and lost in the new 24-ward council. That results from the abrupt mid-election redistricting imposed by the province. Joining us now on what happened in the municipal election in Ontario's capital city, we welcome Jennifer Pagliaro. She is the City Hall reporter for the Toronto Star. And JPEGs, it's good to have you back in our studio.
Thank you for having me.
Let's just, before we get to the capital city, we got to talk about the two biggest upsets on the night. One of them in Brampton, where Patrick Brown, who has to have had the most topsy-turvy roller coaster ride of any politician ever, narrowly edges out the incumbent Linda Jeffrey. How did that happen?
It's really almost incredible to see. It seems almost impossible. You have someone who represented Barrie well on his way to being the Conservative premier of the province, and then we had this scandal that saw him stepping down, reporters chasing him through the hallways of Queen's Park late at night, and then we thought maybe that was the end. He re-emerges in Brampton, a place that he hasn't really lived, he's never represented, and I think you're completely right. That was the most shocking result, I think, of last night's election. And now Brampton's contending with this new mayor who is an enemy for the most part of Premier Doug Ford. He had some very strong words about, Brampton's place in the world last night, and it'd be very interesting to watch that relationship.
In fact, someone who worked on Doug Ford's election campaign was working for the former Liberal Cabinet Minister Linda Jeffrey, now the mayor. So strange bedfellows there. How about in Burlington? There was another upset there. Marianne Mead Ward is now the new mayor, defeating incumbent Rick Goldring. What went into that upset?
Yeah, we saw a lot of incumbent mayors toppled by incumbent councillors and councillors who have been there for 2, maybe 3 terms. The same thing was true in Stouffville, and there was a lot of issues around development in downtown Burlington, about the intensification in that area, this question of, high-rise versus mid-rise, which has plagued cities like Toronto. We're kind of well past that point. We're talking about, skyscrapers versus high-rise instead of this high-rise, mid-rise fight, but that was, it seemed like a linchpin issue in that race, and they'll continue to have those kinds of development fights, I think.
Let's get to the capital city. John Tory re-elected with 63.5% of the vote. What does that look like to him?
It's huge, I think. I mean, he really wanted the win in 2014, and he always said he wanted a second term. This is an incredibly strong mandate for a second-term mayor. Of course, we're in this new political reality where we have a shrunken 25-ward council, and he's responsible for trying to build up a coalition of votes to actually pass what he thinks should be the biggest issues and the biggest touch points in this new term. The interesting thing for me is there wasn't really a clear agenda in this campaign. We heard about affordable housing, we heard about transit, we heard about the overall affordability in this city, but the mayor was really running on his previous record and not necessarily a new vision for the city. So we have to find out from him what he plans to do in this term.
Usually when you lose by 40 points, it's not a good thing, but a lot of people are saying Jennifer Keesmaat presented herself well and the future looks bright. What do you see?
I think that she put up some really important ideas in this campaign. I think that she challenged Tory on, not doing enough to help those in more disenfranchised parts of the city. And with the kind of gun violence we've seen this summer, and what we know is still the problem about the roots of youth violence, those are things that John Tory and this council are really going to have to contend with. We heard her say last night that she wants to continue fighting for the city. She hasn't been clear on if that means a political future, but we know that she's been courted in the past by, federal and provincial Liberals. I don't think that she has any clear political stripes. She's not a conservative by any means, but I think we could see something from her, a future run or an appointment perhaps in one of those forums.
We should probably just take a moment here to talk about the fact that this may have been the most chaotic campaign in the city's history, in as much as, of course, the rules changed halfway through. 47-member council was out. Doug Ford decided a 25-member council was in. Given how little time the city staff had to prepare for this new slimmed-down race, how did it all unfold?
You're right. It was the most chaotic I think we've seen in recent history in the city. And right now we have a council-elect and a mayor-elect in a council system that isn't set up for them. The the wards are broken into these community councils, and they deal with these very intricate issues like removing trees on private property and approving parking pads so people have enough space for their cars in the suburbs. But right now, those community councils don't make any sense with the 25 ward alignment, and council
the borders are all different.
Exactly, and in some places you have 2 or 3 councillors per community council. So if one of them doesn't show up, you don't have quorum. All these like very weird, intricate issues that have become really problematic for actually running the city, doing the specific business of the city, that you'll start to notice right away if they don't fix this immediately.
So at some point they got to get the borders all aligning, the community council borders with the ward borders.
They have to completely redo them.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to just we're going to dive deep on, what is it, 7 or so races of the 25-member council, which were really intriguing, and just give me a couple lines on each one if we can. Starting with, actually, the ward we're in right now, Toronto St. Paul's. 2 incumbents, because of the squishing of the size of council. You had numerous examples of incumbent against incumbent. Josh Matlow, victorious. Joe Mihevc, 3 decades on council, defeated. 2 progressives. What's the takeaway?
This is a big one. Late in the campaign, John Tory endorsed Joe Mihevc. This is after he kind of spoke about left-wing radicals on council. But, as Josh himself said, and I think this is true, it may have been more about, the fact that Tory wanted Matlow off of council. He's challenged him consistently about the controversial Scarborough subway and other big policy items, and now they're on council together.
Humber River, Black Creek. The end has come for Giorgio Mammoliti.
He's gone. This was a huge win for the progressives. Anthony Peruzza was victorious. Mammoliti has been this controversial presence on council for many decades, and this was the end of his council career.
York Centre is an example of a progressive up against a more conservative voice, and the conservative voice took it.
Right. This is the one where the conservatives get this one. They really pushed for James Pasternak. He's a really safe vote for John Tory. He's a member of his executive, likely will be again, and that was big for them.
And Maria Ojimeri, many decades on council,
long time NDP voice. Yeah, she's been there a long time, a lot of institutional knowledge.
Only last year, Nathan Shan won a by-election to win a seat on Toronto City Council in Scarborough Rouge Park, and he loses his second time out by just 651 votes.
Yeah, this was interesting. You have Jennifer McKelvey, who's really part of the community there. She's been fighting for the Scarborough subway. She's been fighting for community renewal in these neighborhoods. And Shan's incumbency was a bit fragile in that he's only really been a councillor since February 2017. So she managed to best him there. We'll see what she plans to do on council.
Just 2 minutes north of here in Eglinton Lawrence, Kristen Carmichael Greb was one of, I think, about 19 candidates who ran last time. She won the seat barely with a very small percentage of the total vote. She got smoked this time by former MPP Mike Cole.
Yeah, Mike Cole really dominated that race. We've been hearing from the community that they didn't feel like Carmichael Greb was an effective councillor. She was, one of the best votes for Tory on council. She was really closely aligned with him, and now you have a much-loved former Liberal MPP who's taken that seat, obviously very familiar to that larger ward as a whole since he represented that riding, and that was a very clear choice from Eglinton Lawrence.
Mayor Tory's endorsement of Josh Matlow's opponent did not, as it turns out, work, but it did in Beaches East York. The endorsement certainly, one has to assume it helped Brad Bradford come through there.
We think that that's likely the case. The votes were so close. We saw close Tory allies out there getting out the vote for Bradford on election day. It's a huge win for him to have pushed his way onto council over what was assumed to be a strong NDP seat. Matthew Kelway, a former MP. So the progressives really missed the boat there. We'll have to see who Bradford wants to be as a city councillor.
And just a few hundred votes, I think, the margin of victory there. Let's do one more. Once again, we'll go back to Scarborough. A new face on council. There are not many new faces, but there is one there.
There is. Scarborough North, we have Cynthia Lai. She was endorsed by current PC MPP Raymond Cho, who previously represented that area. She said she's going to be a champion for the Shepherd subway, and we're going to see a lot of those transit fights, I think, resurrect themselves on this term of council.
Remember this guy? You want to zoom in? There you go. That's Jim Bradley. Jim Bradley, 41 years at the Ontario Legislature, lost in the June election, came third actually. One of a number of Liberal MPPs who, when the tide comes in, they come in, and when the tide goes out, they go out. Let's just make a bit of a list here. Jim Bradley wins for Niagara Region Council. Mike Cole, you talked about already, coming back on Toronto City Council. Catherine McGarry, another former Liberal MPP, coming back now as Mayor of Cambridge. Deepika Damerla, former Liberal MPP, now on Mississauga City Council. Bill Morrow, former Liberal MPP, now Mayor of Thunder Bay. Is this to suggest that when these folks lost just a few months ago, it really wasn't about them? Because here they are just a few months later, and in some cases, they've staged some pretty impressive upsets.
Yeah, some of these races are, Bradley's a great example. I think that's an example of liked representatives going out with the tide, not necessarily as a result of their personal record or their personal relationship with the communities. Cole's a great example of this. He's clearly a very well-liked representative in Eglinton Lawrence. He barely lost in the provincial election, which I think you can attribute more to Kathleen Wynne and the party generally than you can to his actual acumen as a leader in that community.
We should also point out there were a couple of former McGuinty cabinet ministers, David Kaplan, George Smitherman. They both ran, attempting to make comebacks. They fell short.
Yeah, I think maybe it was a bit too off in the distance for some people. Kaplan tried to make a go of it against Tory's deputy mayor, Denzel and Wong, in Don Valley East. In the end, Denzel had a pretty secure victory, and I think that maybe it's just a product of the time that's passed. Mike Cole is a more familiar face, more recently, knocking at their doors or available for phone calls.
Jennifer, the good news for John Tory is he won an overwhelming mandate. The bad news for him is that when council reconvenes in December, the new council, he is 1 vote out of 25. And he still has to fashion a majority to get his programs through council. Give us a sense of how that's playing out.
This is the thing we've been watching very closely during this race because of the interference from the province on the size of council. There was a question of whether there would be a real dominance of conservative, right-leaning suburban voices.
Let's bring the map up, and this will help show the point I think that you want to make. That's what the city looks like today.
So this is really interesting. You've got what we're calling a very slim majority of right-leaning councillors for Mayor John Tory.
Where the blue is.
That's the blue. And then you've got you see this kind of fortress of left-leaning councillors in the downtown core. These are the people that you've known and loved for a long time. Mike Layton, Joe Cressy, Kristen Wong-Tam representing that downtown swath there. And then you've got what you said, not very many, but a few new faces. Mike Cole and Eglinton Lawrence, obviously a Liberal. We're not sure where he'll align on council. He's part of this Midtown middle there. We'll see how that goes for John Tory. And we also have these new Scarborough faces who are very concerned about transit, community violence. We may see them end up on the right-leaning side of council, which will really bolster Tory's ability to get large votes through the chamber. And in Beaches East York, I think the most interesting person of all of these new faces is Brad Bradford. He really does say that he's of no political party, but as you mentioned, he may owe a lot to John Tory or feel like he does, and we might see that play out early on in the new term.
So let's do some quick math here. 25-member council, that means you need 13 votes?
14.
14 votes? Oh, because everything loses on a tie.
Everything loses on a tie, exactly.
Right, so 14 votes to get your program through. Did I just count 11 reliable Conservative votes there for the mayor?
I think it's somewhere around a dozen
11 or
very,
12?
very reliable votes.
So he's got to pick up a few more if he wants to get stuff through.
He's got to pull some of those unknown or try to build a coalition with what we're calling the middle.
Now, as you look at the kind of left versus right scenario in the next council compared to what it was like in the previous, admittedly larger council, how does the ratio stack up this time?
In the 44 ward, 45 person council, there was always a very strong suburban right-leaning voice. And doing some quick math last night, it's not really any more right-leaning than it was in the past. If anything, I think the progressives actually have an opportunity when you look at that map to pull some votes over to their side and perhaps try to pull the mayor onto their side to say, this is the right thing to do, this is the policy we should pursue, and that you might see them actually pull Tory and some of his allies in that direction. I think they have more of an opportunity to do that this time around than they may have in the last term.
This is not a parliamentary system, and yet there is still a sort of unofficial leader of the opposition on council. Who do you think that is?
For a long time, it's been Councillor Gord Perks. He's always sort of led what we call the left caucus. We call it a caucus sort of jokingly because, of course, there's no actual parties. I think you will see leaders emerging like Joe Cressy, who may be considering a run for mayor in the future, and also Josh Matlow, who put up a real fight against Tory and the Tory-backed candidate in this race. And Tory sort of declared war on Matlow in this term, and Matlow may come back and push back against the policies the mayor thinks are important.
One of the reasons Premier Ford said he wanted a smaller council was that he thought it took too long for Toronto City Council to make decisions with 45 members. Now that it's 25, and now that we know who the people are that are going to be there, is there any reason to believe things will get done more quickly and more efficiently?
I'm not sure, because there isn't a very clear majority of, right or left, that will have any easier time having major policy pushed through council. There's still a lot of things that council is very divided on, and we still see what I think is a very divided council. There's still this urban-suburban divide. There's still this question of the war on cars and subways, and none of those things have gone away. It's a lot of the same people, it's just less of them.
So as the mayor sits down with his advisors today to sort of figure out, okay, let's see how we're going to approach this, what's the biggest thing he's got to worry about going forward?
I think just keeping his team intact. He has to figure out who he's going to put on that executive committee. It's a very coveted position that may help him secure some safe votes. I think he should be thinking about what he wants to accomplish this term, whether it's a legacy, if this really is his last term, or if it's building a better city. He said that he wants to make sure there are opportunities for everyone in all parts of the city, and that's going to be a really hard job. We've seen a lot of disparity recently.
Now let's just finish up on that one little thing you snuck in there. If this really is his last term, he has said over and over and over through the campaign, this is going to be his last term. Is there any reason to doubt that it will be?
We heard a little bit of couch language from him last night when he was asked about this. He's been clear that he wanted a second term. We always thought that he was ready to, call that the end. That would be a long bout of public service for him. But it depends what he thinks he can and what he thinks he has accomplished in the next 4 years. And if he's not sure that his legacy is secured, if that was to be the end for him, then I think it is possible he would run again, and it would depend who he thinks would take his place.
You know who will kill him if he seeks a third term?
I think his wife Barb has waited a long time to just spend time with him and the grandkids, and I think that she's a very strong presence in his life. It'd be very interesting to see what she says maybe 2 or 3 years in.
That is the right answer to that question. Okay, Jennifer, it's good to have you here at TVO again. Thanks so much for your help on this.
Thank you for having me.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.